Hello, my name is Lillian Agbeegbe. I'm glad to come to you with LA Lenses. LA Lenses is me looking at things from lenses that I'm putting on exclusively my own perspective. I have a request to do a presentation on hermaphrodites patients. I want to let you know I did get that request. I'm going to leave that pending for now. I wanted to still go ahead and talk a little bit more about domestic violence and basically about some misconceptions that is affecting our ability to end domestic violence, intimate partner violence. For the purpose of this presentation, I'm going to use something that I read about on the internet a while back. Now, I do know that in the age that we live in today, a lot of things on the internet are incorrect or false, and these may be false. I cannot vouch for its authenticity, but I'm going to use it because it's going to help me explain what I want to do. So a while back, I read that somebody buried their parent in a Jeep vehicle. A Jeep. Put a person in the Jeep and put the Jeep in the ground and bury the person. Now, does that mean a Jeep is no longer a mode of transportation? I don't think so. Does that mean a casket is no longer meant for burying people? I don't think so. I say this to say that sometimes people might take what something is meant for and use it for something else. That doesn't mean that A, what they're using it for is now the correct purpose of that thing, or B, what is the correct purpose for the thing is no longer what that thing is meant for. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. I'm saying this with regards to domestic violence, intimate partner violence. Sometimes you won't talk about domestic violence, intimate partner violence. People get bent out of shape. People get very defensive because some people in their minds have used this as an anti-cultural thing, as a pro-female thing, as an anti-men thing. People are like, oh no, don't come and talk about that. You're anti-culture. This is not what we do in our culture. You're anti-faith. We believe in the word of whoever we believe, and this is not in accordance with our religious beliefs. Or say, no, you're just being pro-female. This is women trying to be one thing or the other. Now, I'm really sorry that people feel that way, but the truth is public health is a science, and we can tell you scientifically that domestic violence, intimate partner violence is a public health concern. Why do we say it is a public health concern? Because this is something that people can be in and be totally unaware of the fact that their health and well-being is being compromised. This is something that costs us in terms of care for medical services. This is something that costs society in terms of lost productivity if we work for abusers or victims who can't function. This is something that affects our social capital in terms of our ability to interact as a community. This is something that affects us as a society in terms of our emotional well-being. I mean, who wants to wake up and hear on the news that a parent has killed another parent and killed their children, their own children now, and just because they're having a disagreement with the other parent? How does that make you feel? Just on the news yesterday, the mass killing in Florida, I think is somewhere, Texas it was, yes. An estranged couple, where the husband went and the estranged wife was having an event and killed the wife, and at the end of the day, I think about 8 or 9 people were dead. We had a similar mass shooting earlier in the year somewhere else. Same thing, 8 or 9 people. And so when we stick our head in the sand and we want to frame domestic violence as something that is anti-cultural, anti-faith, we are not learning the things that we need to learn to be able to combat domestic violence. We're not learning the things that we learn to be able to say, to be able to identify and respond to domestic violence that is going on in and around us. And so let's look at it. When we say domestic violence, we're really not saying that you can have misunderstanding in your relationship. You're not going to go to a public health professional and say, oh, well, my husband was watching TV and he asked me to go get him dinner from the kitchen. Can you imagine? And we're going to say, oh my goodness, you're in an abusive situation. Here are the resources for you. No. We do understand that people will be people and you can have these disagreements and differences. What we talk about when we talk about domestic violence, intimate partner violence, we're looking for a pattern of behavior. We're also looking for things that border on power and control. Power and control, I'll give you an example. So if you're in a healthy relationship and you want to have a basic disagreement, my hair is too long, and your husband says your hair's too long and you cut it short. Usually that ends it. He really meant your hair was too long and he just wanted your hair to be short, and you cut it short, and that was the end of everything. If you're in an abusive relationship, however, it's about power and control. It's about keeping you on your toes. It's about making you uncomfortable. And so your hair is too long and you think, okay, let me go cut it short, and that will solve the problem. No, it doesn't. Your hair's short and they're like, your hair's too short. And you're like, what? Okay, and then you go and put on, no, it's too long. And then you think, okay, this hair is causing too much problem. I'm going to take it all out. And it becomes, no, you don't have any hair. And like, okay, and it's never going to end, because it's not about you or what you're doing per se. It's about having control over you. It's about making sure that you're on edge and you can be jumpy all the time. That's when we say that you're in an abusive relationship. We're very clear that we look for power and control situations. We look for consistency, a pattern and behavior. And then I want to talk about what we define to be intimate partner violence and domestic violence. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, a foremost public health institution here in the United States where I practice, identifies 4 types of behaviors that qualify for intimate partner violence. Talk about physical violence. That's a very common one. Everyone knows. Usually people say, did he hit you? Did she hit you? So that can be very obvious. You see the wounds, you see the scars, you're seeing the gunshot wounds, the strangulation wounds, and you can very easily say that that person is in an abusive relationship. Unfortunately, people think that that's the only form of abuse, and it is not. Sexual violence is also a form of intimate partner violence. Now, I know that the people who think, oh my goodness, we're in a relationship, I should be able to have sex at any time, it shouldn't be an issue. Even people want to quote the Bible says that do not deny yourself except during fasting. Yeah, so the Bible says that. The Bible doesn't say, however, you must not. It's a suggestion that you should not. And even if I want to go further, I may be inclined to say that if you put that in context of the time, maybe you really didn't have any reason to be tired or worn out. But if you're going through all the hassles of today, now that's being subjective again, I say this is my lenses. If you're going through all the hassles of today and you're coming through at the other end, you can't genuinely be tired and say no. So when we don't say, we're able to say, yeah, women can preach in church today. Some people who say that you can go to church with your head uncovered. But then it comes and then we say, no, we must stick to this one as it was written. The truth. You can be in a relationship and the person can say no. The flip side of sexual abuse is also somebody depriving you of sex in a relationship as a form of punishing you. Now, they know you can't go anywhere. They know they don't let you go out, you can go anywhere, and says, oh no, yeah, you're going to have to beg, and then I'm going to make you go without it for as long as possible so that you can beg, and then I can make you do whatever it is I want you to do so that I can give it to you. That is a form of intimate partner violence, domestic violence. Stalking. Stalking is a form of intimate partner violence, domestic violence. What is stalking? I assure you nobody loves anybody that much to be with you 24 hours. It's not so much of the fact that you don't love the person, it's the fact that you recognize that the person is a person and is able to have other things that they need to address. And so, no, you don't need to know when they get up in the morning. No, you don't need to know how many minutes it took them to walk from the car to the bus stop. No, you don't need to know how many minutes it took them to walk from the bus stop to the office. No, you don't need to know how long it took them to get from the elevator to their own floor. You're stalking the person. You're calling the person all the time. You're texting the person all the time. You have a track on the person's phone, a track on the person's car. That's not healthy. Psychological abuse, psychological aggression. That's one that is not well known or not well recognized. So sometimes you say you're in an abusive relationship and people want to say, oh, were you hit, were you beat? And so all of that is not happening and therefore you're good. No. Psychological aggression is so bad that it distorts a person's mind. And they can end up having physical health conditions because of psychological aggression. People resort to drinking, to smoking, to all sorts of things to cope with psychological aggression. People can become suicidal because of psychological aggression. Intimate partner violence has caused people to suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. Post-traumatic stress disorder. Now think about that. People who go to war suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. People who experience intimate partner violence suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. It's a mind thing. It plays with your mind. And so when you see these 4 behaviors pattern present, then somebody is suffering from intimate partner violence. So we are not helping ourselves. If we look at an intimate partner violence situation and we say, oh, you are just being pro-male, you're just being pro-female. No, we need to understand that these behaviors fall in the category that qualifies an interaction to be domestic violence. We need to understand that domestic violence advocates saying that domestic violence is an issue of concern and it should be addressed at every level, not just because we are in public health, we just care about people, okay? And so we say to ourselves, you know, this is the motivation for the work that we do. A person is a person because a person is a person. And so health equity is something that's important to us. We don't think that you should have better health than the other person. Now, you may have better health because of what you're able to afford and things like that, but there's some basic things that everybody should have. Affordable housing, education, access to healthcare, access to good foods, good roads, and all of that. You should be eligible for it. We work with issues and social determinants of health, and so we work with fields outside public health because we're trying to make sure that everybody in the community is healthy. And so that's how we come to intimate partner violence. It's not about we're trying to take down one religion, or we're trying to take down culture, or we're trying to put one sex above the other. We're just saying that people should be treated with respect. People should be treated with dignity, especially if you are in an intimate relationship with some other person. And so therefore, if you're in an intimate relationship with some other person and these behaviors are happening, then there is cause for concern, because it will cost you. It will cost you your health. It will cost you your life eventually, or in some cases, it will cost you your mental and psychological well-being. It will influence the society around you. So I just wanted to today work and address that misconception that when you're having a conversation about domestic violence, you're just saying that people can have disagreements in their relationship. That's not what it is. We're not saying people can have disagreements in their relationship. No, we're not saying that your husband has to do everything that you say all the time. No, we're not saying that you as a wife you can't say there's something that you don't want to do or whatever. No, we're not saying take your religious book, your Bible or whatever, and turn it on your head. No, we are saying that this is something that the evidence shows that there's this behavior that has consequences on individuals who are exposed to them. Individuals who are exposed to them in an intimate relationship have consequences for them. It affects them. It begins to model a practice of behavior for people who are coming up. So somebody's living around where domestic violence is being practiced. The younger person can see that this behavior brings about the desired result for the person who's the abuser, and begins to think that it's acceptable for me to behave like this so that I can get my desired outcome. It also begins to model for the victim. Somebody begins to think this is what love is. After all, I grew up in an environment where these people said that they were in love, and this person was treating this person shabbily, and the person was okay with it. And so the person goes into a relationship using that as a yardstick to think that that's an acceptable way to be treated in a relationship. All of these are not acceptable, and it's very important for us to recognize these issues. There's no point camouflaging the issues. Now, I'm really very sorry that there are people who are anti-faith. I'm really very sorry that there are people who are anti-culture. I'm really very sorry that there are people who are anti-men. I'm really very sorry about all of those conversations that are going on. But I think it's important for us to know that focusing on it's just like what I said at the beginning. So this person buried a parent in a Jeep car, and then because you say that person buried the person in a Jeep car, you can no longer use a Jeep as a mode of transportation. No. Or you say somebody who wants to bury somebody in a casket and like, oh no, that's not what caskets they made, or that's not what you bury people in. You don't. No. We cannot stop to have the conversation, because guess what? Every day somebody is dying from domestic violence. 1 in 4 women. Believe me or not, what that means is that somebody you know is currently a victim of domestic violence or has previously experienced domestic violence. Whether you're aware or not, 1 in 7 men currently a victim of domestic violence has previously experienced domestic violence, whether you know it or not. And it's important for us to get these conversations going and for us to be able to move away from issues that stop us from focusing on what do I need to know? How can I help? Because there is a role that you can play. The rest of our life, our motto is we are putting you on call to end domestic violence. And what we mean by putting you on call is we're saying that be attentive wherever you are. And for those people who are familiar with being on call, it's wherever you are, and anytime you're needed, you get a call and say respond to a situation. And so we think everybody should be on call. Domestic violence is not one person's war. It's not the war, and I'm using that figuratively. This is not, the campaign of the abusers. It's not the challenge of the victims. It's not the challenge of the professionals who work in the field. It's everybody's challenge. Guess what? Because we all suffer from domestic violence, whether we're aware of the effect or not. We're either paying for victims who have to be treated, we're paying for victims who can't work, we're suffering emotionally from all of this alarming news that's going on. And they're all sort of trickle-down effects that we have to deal with, living in a community where there are abusers and where there are victims. And what we need to do is to be able to move away from domestic violence in our communities. Next time I'm going to talk about another thing that distracts our attention as far as I'm concerned is the gender wars, so we get all caught up in the gender war of he, she, and all of that. It distracts us, I think, from the main issues that we should be facing. But I want to go away and put you on call today. What am I doing by putting you on call? I'm telling you to challenge an abusive behavior. Now and that's one of the things that the literature tells us, that whereas not everybody is abusive, a lot of people see abusive practices and do nothing about it. But you don't do that with your friend who's overweight. You don't do that with your friend who's a chain smoker. You don't do that with your friend who has a drinking problem. You say to them, watch your weight. You say to them, what you're drinking. You say to them, what you're smoking. Why can't you say, watch your behavior to your friend who's an abuser? And yes, there are some abusers who you will never know that they're abusers. But I tell you that there's some abusers that you know are really making snide, inappropriate remarks to their partners in your presence. And here's a way to look at it. If somebody can be so condescending to their partner when they have company in your presence, can you imagine what they're doing behind closed doors? So you need to be able to challenge an abusive behavior. It works better when you challenge an abusive behavior before the victim says something is wrong. Because the abuser is likely to discountenance what the victim says, like, yeah, what else are you going to say? So we need to be having conversations about inappropriate behaviors coming from people other than the victims on a consistent, regular basis. I want you to challenge an abusive behavior. I want you also to be an advocate for change wherever you are. Advocate for change in policies, advocate for change in funding. You can advocate for your school, work, employers, environment, wherever it is. Advocate for training, advocate for awareness. Do something. I want you to lend support to an abuser. Lend support to an abuser. Sometimes abusive behaviors can be modified. So you need to find out what is it that's predisposing this person. I want you to listen to a victim. You know, it takes a lot of courage for somebody to come out and say that, you know, I've been a victim of domestic violence. And the last thing you want to hear is like, really, seriously, like, did that really happen? So listen, some things you can pick out yourself. You do not, it's not rocket science. So I stand here, for instance, and I say to you that, oh yeah, the Queen of England is my cousin. I mean, that's not rocket science. That's not rocket science. That has to be a lie. So if somebody comes to you and says, you know, I'm treating this person like this, or this person is treating me like this, if you listen very well, you'll be able to tell, you know, something isn't right here. But when you're not listening very well, you miss the clues. And we're going to talk about clues in some future presentation when we talk about red flags. I'm going to talk about red flags. We're going to talk about cues. So I am committed to two things. One, we're going to talk about the gender divide in some future date. And we're going to talk about clues to red flags to look for, you know, because, you know, somebody was like, oh my goodness, I never knew. Because you didn't know what to look for. If you know what to look for, you may not have been able to say positively, but you could have had very strong suspicion that could have helped you, you know, in the conversations that you have with the victim and the abuser. My name is Lillian Agbaigbe. I thank you for listening to me. Domestic violence is a preventable public health issue, and we're counting on you to play your part. We're putting you on call to end intimate partner violence, challenge and abusive behavior, advocate for change, and listen to victims and lend support to victims. Have a nice rest of your day. Thank you.